Welcome, everyone, to episode 37 of Top of Mind with Consilio Wealth. On today's episode, we are talking about a prosperity study from Intuit that covers kind of like the reverse FIRE movement. If you are familiar with that, the FIRE is an acronym that stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. They had an interesting study that came out that I guess kind of contradicts that right now with what young people are doing. Secondly, the National Association of Realtors was found guilty of price gouging. This is hot in the news. We'll unpack this. American economy is just rocking in a good way. Doing very, very well. Jobs report strong. Everything seems to be pretty good, which highlights this continued. I think I should update my saying now. We are 1 month away from a recession for the last 20 months now, I think, Hao. Isn't that right?
I think so, yeah.
Economists accurately predict 20 out of the last 10 recessions. I think that's right. And finally, Singles Day and what it means for the Chinese economy. All right, timestamp. It is 9:52 in the morning, Friday, October 17th. It's the week before Thanksgiving. Hope everyone has some great plans for next week. I'm taking next week off and preparing to have some family over to the house and have a good time for Thanksgiving. What about you, Hal? What are you doing for Thanksgiving?
I'm not taking it off. My team's on a call the Black Friday, but again, I wasn't going to shop physically that day anyway. But yeah, we have a nice week at home planned, which is going to be awesome.
Very good.
Low key is better.
Very good. I like that. All right. Let's go to this prosperity study. This is interesting. You found this in the news, or did you attend a webinar on this, or how did you find this?
I found this link through through a seminar. The people who published it is Intuit. I think the people behind TurboTax, I believe. They were just studying 3,500 participants around the world, around the North American world, so Canada and U.S., around our world, I guess. And they just asked them what they thought about what they thought about finance in general. And I think one of the big things that came out was, as Chris mentioned, the FIRE movement, which is I forgot the FI again. Retire early.
Financial independence. Retire early.
And I think there's been a big push, especially from Twitter-based finance or personal finance, and you don't have to look hard to find plenty of people saying you save $1 million by the time you're 35, you can retire if you spend $20,000 a year or something, right? Really frugal lifestyle. But the flip side is you don't have to work the rest of your life, right? And so 35 is a really young age to retire. And what Intuit found is their survey responders were anti that. They wanted to save softly or not save at all. I wrote an article about people spending their home savings, right? Or the potential home savings for a new home purchase is suddenly out of reach in terms of being able to buy the house. I got $50,000 and mortgage rates are 8%. I still can't afford to buy that house even with that down payment because home prices haven't come down. So therefore, I'm going to spend it and enjoy life. And I think this is kind of related to that, where younger people aren't seeing where their savings are going, and they're kind of taking money out of the pockets of their future selves to enjoy life now. So that's what I describe as anti-FIRE, but they call it soft saving in this report. And a couple of things that they uncovered about the questions, the body positivity movement, where people were like, hey, I'm comfortable with my weight and my height, yada, yada. They're asking for more personal finance transparency, where you would typically see people driving around in Lamborghinis or Ferraris, and I did it because a side hustle. I earned $100,000 a month on, something really outlandish and ridiculous. And I think we see that pretty often, just normally, right, in social media where, oh, we're going on a great vacation. We just bought a brand new car. We're so rich. We're doing really well. But what people in this report are really asking for is personal finance transparency. Just kind of open up the ugliness. We have this much debt, right? This is how much we're paying on that debt. We bought this house. We're not happy because the roof needs to be repaired. We've had to not only carry the mortgage debt, we've had to carry home equity debt, or whatever the ugly side of some of this lavish spending comes about. I think that's an important side of the story too, when you're looking at social media especially, right? I think people need to be, I don't know, discussing your finances is very special talent. And it's kind of like undoing years of habits of never talking about your salary, never talking about how much debt you have, right? Because it's always been taboo. And the financial transparency push, and again, it's not a push per se, but it's just, it would be nice to see some of these spenders really say how much they make.
And how much debt they have.
How much debt they have.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's like, hey, look at this new flashy car, but now I have a $1,400 a month payment.
Yeah, and it's a lease or something, right?
Yeah, or whatever. Yeah, exactly. So I think that's interesting. So the desire is not necessarily, I want to be flashy like them. It's can I be flashy like them? Like, do I have money like them? But if then that person, showed their finances, then it would be up to the person on the other end of, say, the Instagram, looking kind of in I guess judging this person that just bought the $1,400 a month car, and saying like, yeah, they could have afforded that or they couldn't, for comparison purposes.
Yeah. Like, let's look at the reality component of an expensive exotic car. Let's not look at Lamborghini or Ferrari. We understand the maintenance costs, right? Or replacing the tires on those things must be a small fortune too.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, what does the maintenance look like on a Mercedes or a BMW? And that's not an extreme case, but that's an expensive part of car ownership that people, especially young people, just don't really consider beyond the payments and the interest rates they're paying on it.
So this is, I just want to quote a couple of things here. So this is saying 1 in 2 say it makes, let's see here. 1 in 2 say it makes them feel what is it? Here, now I'm quoting out of turn. I think it's referring to when they see somebody else, on Instagram or something that's doing well. Okay, thank you. So, all right. So over 1 in 2 say it, and it is like seeing somebody else on the other side of, say, Instagram. So 1 in 2 say it makes them feel like they're falling behind on their life goals when they see so many people around them who are succeeding so easily. And this is 73% of Gen Z respondents compared to only 55% of the general population who is responding this way. And the second statistic here is 1 in 2 say that they feel less prosperous when they compare themselves to others. Again, 67% of Gen Z versus 58% of the general population. And lastly, the Gen Z, they're interested in exploring and learning about saving and investing, but the approach is much softer. Their objectives, that says it's all about personal growth and mental well-being in the now. And they would rather feel more fulfilled now than save for a future that is unknown. I certainly can't knock that first point, mental well-being, personal growth, that type of stuff. But there is certainly a challenge in thinking, if you don't see a future or see yourself in that future, therefore you aren't saving for that future. That's a scary reality, assuming that future becomes a reality and you're still around.
Because what you lose is the thing you can't get back is time.
Compound interest, yeah.
And I think if you're either 50-year-old self, are you kicking your 20-year-old self in the pants for taking this exotic Greek trip that loaded your younger self up on debt that you had to climb out of?
And I think that's the important thing, is that if you can afford it, absolutely not. But if it's what unseated your retirement, your ability to have any sort of financial independence, you might be kicking yourself for not understanding the reality. So that's interesting that these kind of respondents are saying, I'd like to see the financials for these people that are so seemingly successful, because maybe they're idiots, right? Or maybe they do have their stuff together, but
or they give me bad advice, which is the most dangerous part of it, right? Because not only they're impacting their own lives, but they're obviously influencing 2/3 of young people to think differently about money, and that's bad.
God, and how many of these people are paying for their Lamborghinis on the amount of money that they're making on their influencer status?
Yes.
Being on Instagram, which, props to everybody who's out there as an influencer. We're rapidly trying to become those too. But if you have no financial acumen or no job, and your job is posting dramatic things to drum up clicks, that's not a fair comparison to somebody that's watching that, who's trying to figure out their career path.
Yeah. And digging further into the study here, this is a bit of conflicting, right? The question was, I've lied before about how much money I make. More than half of the Gen Z population said yes. And if I were asked about how much debt I have, about nearly 60% wouldn't tell the truth about the amount of debt they carry.
I make more and I have less debt. That's the deal.
And that goes completely counter to transparency, but it might be more social pressure to not be so upfront about your financials. Because I said it is taboo, at least here in the States, where talking about our salaries and how much debt we have is so personal. And I totally get that. But to ask for transparency and then that they themselves are lying, and again, it's not like a life-threatening lie, but it's lying about, what you said earlier about trying to be transparent. And I think that's, again, being more transparent about things can help some of the social pressures, but I don't think it really changes the behaviors, because I'm willing to bet some of the people who cashed in their home savings never seen a TikTok. They just wanted to get out and go to Greece and spend, 10,000 of that 50,000, which is a huge chunk.
Let's talk quickly here on this net worth by planning status chart that you have here in the deck.
Yeah, so this is kind of related, but this Yale professor, James Choi, who is actually Yale's personal finance guru. So Dr. Choi does teaching specifically on personal finance, and I believe he is a proponent of saving later in your life, because as you earn more, economically speaking, if you could afford to save more, you do save more later in life versus younger in life. So if I'm 20 years old, I can only save $100 a month. That doesn't economically move the needle too much, right? Compounding helps, but the amount of savings, like I think his argument is the savings rate or the savings amount matters more than compounding, which that's from an economic point of view. But I think a couple things there is, when you're starting young, you're developing better habits when you're saving young, right? Saving a bigger portion.
I'll save when I make more money.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Yeah, I could just flip the switch,
I'll
right?
save. Yeah.
And I think that's a problem with economists, where they don't really consider human behavior. And I totally get that they can't, because they're trying to measure millions of people, hundreds of millions of people, financial decisions, right? But I think he does a study. He has a study where he looked into. He quotes a study that measures net worth by age 50, and there's 4 categories, right? People with no plan. The second one would be tried to figure out how much to save, just napkin math, right? How much do I need to retire? A formal developed plan is the third category, and able to stick to the plan is the fourth. And the net worth jumps pretty significantly from steps 1 to 2. So age 50, people with no plan, their net worth is $122,000. If they even put something on paper and plan something, that net worth on average jumps up to $307,000.
It's like 2.5x.
Yeah. And you think
Napkin
about how
math is
simple
powerful.
that is. Yeah. And then the next one, I think this is where professionals start to come into the picture to help kind of take the plan to the finish line. Yeah. So the developed plan is it's kind of what we do, right? We look at expenses, we look at spending, we look at income and future income. 370,000 net worth at age 50 if you have a developed plan. I'm assuming that's formal.
Maybe another 20% increase or so.
Yeah. And then the ability to stick to the plan, $410,000 net worth on average. Again, they're using averages, so some people might be really, really successful, but I think the study's eye-opening about
it's like
just
another 12,
starting a plan
10, 12%
and sticking
increase.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And by age 50, you have maybe 15 working years left, if you're lucky.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not planned or at least develop some kind of a back of a napkin plan by then, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah. I mean, the difference between the no plan and the able to stick to the plan, I mean, it's 3.5x, which is the difference between actually retiring or having some semblance of financial security and not. Wow.
Yeah, and I think that's why the soft saving plan could be pretty dangerous for the rest of your decades, right? Because it's setting up pretty early on bad spending habits.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Interesting. Let's shift gears. Let's talk about the National Association of Realtors. This lawsuit, in my opinion, actually was settled. I don't know if it was settled, but was determined pretty quickly.
Yeah.
There was a suit 1 week, and all of a sudden, like the next week or the week after that, boom.
Yep, guilty. Yeah.
Guilty. Yeah. It's like, wow, that was fast. What happened here? And I guess what's on the docket? What might change for real estate and real estate commissions moving forward?
The seller pays real estate agent commission on both the seller's agent and the buyer's agent. So
Seller pays all.
Seller pays all, and the fee goes split down the middle, 3% to the on average, right? 3% to the buyer's agent and 3% to the seller's agent, right?
It's a big cost. Yeah, it's a big cost to transact a big asset.
Yeah. So what the Missouri, court found was that's an illegal practice, and it kind of opened up this can of worms about, well, have home prices gone up as a result of that high fee? Because sellers will determine the price, right?
So I think the regulation here is proposing that buyers pay the buyer's commission. So it's proposing that rather than seller pay all, I suppose the lawsuit said the seller pay all creates this potential conflict between the listing agent and the buying agent because both want a higher price. And so they were proposing to split how those commissions are paid, which means that the buyer would actually have to pay the commission for their buyer's agent, and then the listing agent would be paid by the seller. And there's certainly some folks against that because they would suggest that, well, now buying a house becomes more challenging because the buyer has to pay the commission out of pocket. And what if the buyer doesn't have that, right? So we need to incent buyers to buy homes, and whoever's selling the home needs to cover all those commissions.
Yeah.
And on the other side of it, the thought process is by splitting those commissions and splitting who's paying those commissions, it should create a more competitive landscape that everybody's fighting for the right things instead of potentially running up the home prices. So I believe part of this lawsuit, it was found that this model, potentially inflated home prices over time. And then there was a verdict that in a number of states, it was billions of dollars that was deemed to be owed back to sellers due to inflated home prices, which are inflating commissions across a number of states that filed this suit. So this will be interesting to see how this unfolds across the nation, maybe even next year, if buyers will be required to pay commissions, or rather if sellers won't be required to pay all. I think that could be an interesting sort of conundrum. And then, of course, are you paying cash for that commission, or are you able to throw that into your loan and finance it? Or, what's the regulation on all that too?
One constraint too is the MLS system. So the
Mm-hmm.
multiple listing service is if you don't agree to this seller commission concession deal, your house won't get listed on the MLS site, which is used by the real estate agents, right?
Right.
And that includes, was it Redfin or Zillow that we talked about?
Redfin just exited the
Yes.
MLS.
Like, do you really need that, right?
I mean, it's where you list a home, right? It's
a marketplace. Yeah.
It is the marketplace. Yeah, there's no other place to go and find. I mean, I Redfin surf more than I surf social media. You know, it's fun. It's fun to do. And so, I mean, if you're not listing on the MLS, which is where Redfin and even Zillow pulls from, you're not going to find your house.
Or you're not going to find a bigger pool of buyers.
Not going to find a bigger pool of buyers, yeah. So I think it's actually very interesting that Redfin pulled out. They said that they charge exorbitant fees and you know, they wanted to distance themselves from it. I think it's a mistake on Redfin's part myself, because you have to be a part of the only marketplace, but I'm not seeing what they're seeing. I'm just an outsider that happens to like the Redfin app and uses it to surf.
Yeah.
Let's move on. I want to throw one thing in here that's kind of funny. It ties back into our last two podcasts. We've been talking about high yield savings accounts and CDs. So I got an email from Amex. We talked a lot about the Amex CD rates, right? Last time, and how it's a really wonky thing. And then on the last podcast, I quoted a credit union thing that I got in the mail from Giza Credit Union. And it had also really weird CD rates, like, you know, 2-year was a fraction of a percent, but 1 year was like 5%, something like that. Okay, so I got an email and it says, hey, you're a platinum card member, so we're going to give you a better high yield savings account rate of 4.55%. Now, if you just Google high yield savings account at Amex, it's only 4.3%. So they're incenting now sort of cross-selling, right?
Yeah.
And forever, Marcus, which is a Goldman Sachs product, has always been just a little bit above the Amex product. I think they priced that on purpose to try to draw business, and I think that probably works. Well, now they're giving a bump in a way to try to cross sell, you know, their current card members. I just think it's interesting. I continue to come back to this. These, you know, card companies need the deposits to guarantee the loans because they're loaning out on credit cards, and credit cards maybe aren't getting paid. That continues to not be proven yet. It seems like credit cards are climbing in terms of debt balances, but on a normal basis. It's not like it's spiking. It's not like consumers are spending on credit. It seems like actually things are pretty normal. But anyway, it's just kind of a conundrum that your credit card companies and your personal loan companies are the best places to put a high yield savings account, it seems like, versus you go to your big bank or even your small credit union or something, and it's laughable, the rate that they're giving you.
Yeah. Yeah, like they're essentially stealing from
They
you.
essentially don't want your money. Like, don't put your money here. We don't want it. Yeah.
But the conundrum is that's where the safe money should be, and they know that. They're not willing to pay up for it.
I want to just talk briefly about the American economy. I think you had some thoughts here on just jobs report and what the Fed's saying, and just give us a quick update. We commented in the beginning, you know, the economy is just chugging along. Give us a quick update on that.
Yeah, I know. When you hear me or Chris say, hey, the economy's great, the country's doing great economically, I know a bunch of people want to slap us and say, hey, go to the grocery store, look at the gas station pump. Things aren't going great. And
prices are high, right? That's what you're
prices
referring
are
to.
high. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think that's showing up, I know that's showing up in the consumer confidence report. It dipped again, and it's still at, again, it's not at the lows of last June, 2022, when it did bottom. But it's lower, right? Things aren't improving in the minds of the U.S. consumer. And I think that has to do with the combination of high rates not having their effect, right? And then high prices. The high rates, the expectation brings down high prices, but the Fed has no interest in lowering prices, right? That's deflation. And that's actually pretty bad for an economy. But again, you could argue that deflating highly inflated prices in such a short period of time might be just normalizing, meaning those prices went too high too fast. They need to come down and deflate, and that's what I think. That's what the biggest concern is. Wall Street is definitely celebrating lower inflation, and Wall Street could care less about price level, right? And that's what the distinction between Wall Street and the real economy is the real economy is really concerned about price level, which is obviously the price of steak last year is more than doubled. Just because it came down 2%, that steak from last year is still 98% more expensive.
I bought a turkey last night. I'm pretty sure the turkey was at least $1 more per pound this year than last year.
Oh, I saw articles that Thanksgiving would be 10% cheaper this year.
Oh, man.
So you're shopping
Maybe I bought too early.
Places. Yeah.
I was going to text my family and say, hey, we're doing Thanksgiving on Friday. I'm buying the turkey on Friday. We're gonna
you're buying the sale turkeys.
Yeah, I'm buying the sale turkey. Yeah.
the unloved, ugly turkeys.
Yep. Whatever one's left, that's what we're going to eat Friday night.
That's not a bad idea.
I know.
I know my wife's listening. I always complain about dry turkey. I hate dry meats. Yeah, she always gives me hell for it because she's the one making the turkey. So again, I love you, Lauren. It's just I can't stand dry meat.
I've experimented with a number of things over the years. I've done a wet brine where you literally put the turkey in a 5-gallon bucket.
We did that. Yeah,
basically salt water, right? I think that works pretty well. The last 2 years, well, I guess last year and then this year, I'm doing it again. I'm doing a dry brine, which of course is just a salt, basically salt rub on there with some herbs and stuff. I think it's great. I think that's the key to not making dry turkey. And then, of course, all the resting and everything like that. But I'm a proponent for that. I think that, I think it's, anyway.
Well, sorry, then going back to how the real world isn't the stock market. The stock market's forward-looking. It's celebrating the fact that there's a downward trend in inflation, but then the danger is deflation. We'll get to China, who's actually, their economy's deflating and prices are deflating.
They'll shift there. Yeah.
I think lower prices is pretty bad for an economy. The last time we had significant deflation was the Great Depression, and we don't want to get back to that era. We do not want to get back to the fact that people are pouring milk in the streets because the farmers are not getting the price they want, but the marketplace is saying, I'm only willing to pay $1 for a gallon of milk, farmer. And the farmer's like, well, it cost me $2 to produce this gallon of milk.
Right.
So we're better off dumping it than selling it to you, who's someone who's unable to pay $2 a gallon for obviously economic reasons in 1930. But I think that's what China's going through right now is deflating prices, and I think we're living through a real life experiment about what really deflation looks like.
And by the way, it makes sense that Wall Street is cheering inflation coming down, not necessarily deflation, because that just means that the rate of increase of prices isn't going up as fast. Therefore, wages can catch up with those prices, and so over time things feel cheaper. I think that it would be great if prices of turkey and other things come down a little bit, but I've seen some of that at the store with sales. I think eggs went down by like 50 cents. The eggs I tend to buy, so I've seen a little bit of it. Cauliflower's coming down. We've been talking about that for a year.
Eggs are crashed down 25%. Wholesale eggs.
And these things never make any sense to me, right? It's like you see the prices go up, and you hear about the articles, and then you tell me something like this: egg prices are down 25%. Not down 25% at the store. Yeah, up like a rocket, down like a feather. That's for sure. Yeah.
I know gas prices crashed, and here we were seeing $4 a gallon again. But yeah, they were hovering around $6 for a long time, and
crazy.
Producers are very fast to up their prices, but very slow to bring it back down.
All right, so let's end with China. So you're commenting on their economy and just their unemployment, and then also Singles Day.
Let's
talk about this.
Their version of Amazon Prime Day. China doesn't really have a lot of original thought. They just typically steal from American ideas. and Singles Days is like Prime Day, and that's a big commerce day. And I think the fact that they extended it by months, so it's like a single stretch now, that started in October, is pretty bad sign that they have an inventory issue like we do, because you don't have to look hard that here in the States that we have early Black Friday deals already starting. That's because there's an inventory issue, and that stuff, as we mentioned time and time again, that stuff costs a lot to store. And you need to get it out of those warehouses or those stores, because Wall Street punishes over inventory issues. Like Target's last earnings, lots of inventory issues. And I don't care what they say about theft or anything, they have an inventory management problem. And I think that's the biggest thing about launching early sale festivities like China is and like we are. It creates deflation in a lot of areas. But theirs is so widespread, it's impacting their food prices, it's impacting goods prices and services prices. And that's probably because their government has locked down the population for so long, and on top of such a bad real estate situation that they're living through, that they need to climb out of as well. So it's a lot of things creating this perfect storm for China, which again, we think of it as a real life experiment. I hate to be so callous, but we will have real insight of what deflation looks like.
This is so interesting too, because I think that China quite possibly did the best at emerging the middle class. Right? They built their middle class, they gave them jobs, and their middle class was rising faster than any middle class, I believe, across the world. And they were kind of coming into their own in terms of spending and spending on more luxury items and services and things like that. And they did a fantastic job. Now that seemed to has sort of pivoted. I just want to read a couple of things here. So this says youth unemployment hit a historic rate in China of 21.3%. This is in June of this year. The government used to not release that data, and now they're releasing that data. Wage growth has also stagnated, reducing the average disposable income. Also, many Chinese households have a ton of wealth tied up in real estate. So about 70% of Chinese household wealth is tied up in real estate, which it remains to be seen, what that's going to do. But likely because the real estate market is so
saturated
and saturated, none of that stuff can be sold. It'll take a lot of time before consumer confidence comes back. And of course, we know that consumer confidence plays a role in spending, and spending is what powers economies. So there's a conundrum over here for sure. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens and how they potentially pull out of it. All right. Well, that's it for today's episode. Everyone listening, have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Hope you have some time with your families. And we will catch you again in 2 weeks. Oh, geez.
What's Gen Z, Gen Y, Gen X, baby boomers?
We're going to have to cut that out because I just looked like a dumbass. So we'll cut that out, but that's okay.